Iron ore docks of Two Harbors, Minnesota is the destination for the next episode of Painting and Travel. Sarah learns at the historic tugboat Edna G, while Roger paints the iron ore docks using acrylics in the early morning sun.
Traveling in northern Minnesota on this perfectly beautiful midsummer's morning along the shoreline of Lake Superior, we stopped in a small town to explore and to find a subject for plein air painting in close proximity to this spectacular body of water. There were a number of attractive choices by this lake that contains as much water as all the other Great Lakes combined, and then some.
These are the iron ore docks, and I've been wanting to paint an industrial type scene, so this fits the bill very well. When I was setting up, Sarah mentioned that this was a complex subject. So what I have to do is to keep all these shapes simple, especially to begin with. So large shapes might bring this down to a manageable activity today. I'm using a 9 by 12 inch masonite board covered with gesso, and I'm using acrylic paints, titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, a transparent Indian yellow, alizarin crimson, and 2 earth colors, burnt umber and burnt sienna. I have my spray bottle with me. This will keep these paints wet. It's quite bright and warm out here today, so they'll dry very fast. I'm going to start with my darks first, ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And I sketched this with charcoal to begin with to save a bit of time. And I'm going to lose a lot of these lines and a lot of this drawing here. But I wanted to establish that in my own mind before I got started. A lot of this will be done with negative areas, especially in here. That's sort of what attracted me to this subject to begin with, is those negative areas, which will be sort of fun to paint. We saw this boat come into the harbor just a few minutes ago, so hopefully it's going to be there for a while and won't leave. I'm just painting right over the charcoal. It doesn't hurt a thing. And like I said, I'm going to lose all this drawing. But to keep things simple, I'm going to make these large blocky shapes. I picked up some cerulean blue along the way. I'm just varying my colors. There's a lot of warmth in there. I could pick up some alizarin crimson just to vary the colors. So this big blocky shape is not just one large mass of color. Just by my brush strokes here, just being slightly different, I can kind of maintain my visual references as to where these things start to break and make the corner and so on. But basically, just one big shape for right now. And even though this might be a complex subject, I always maybe kid myself into thinking paintings are going to be much more simple than they are. But we'll just see how this one goes. Sometimes you get a good feeling about a painting and it comes off very fast, right away. Other times it's quite a struggle. But this is a neat subject. I like this subject. The water in the Lake Superior here is very blue and very green color, and I can see that down in here. Now I'll pick up my burnt sienna and some alizarin crimson, and that will be the color of the hull of this ship, the aft portion of this ship. It really is important to simplify everything in a painting like this. To get hung up in lots of detail to begin with is really a mistake. Okay, we have the white part of the ship, but of course it's in shadow, so it's not going to be white. And it's being lit by the sky a lot, so I'm going to make this a cool color, maybe mix some of the warm color with it, just to make it a gray, but sort of a cool gray. cerulean blue and the burnt sienna. Yeah, that's kind of I think that might be the right color. By the way, this palette is a glass palette, and this is a middle tone gray on this palette. And I think what I'm looking at there is a middle tone gray, but it's hard to tell until I actually get things placed on here. But if I'm looking for a middle tone gray, then when I mix this here, I can compare that to my middle tone gray on my palette. I like that idea. I prefer that much more than having a wooden palette that's always sort of a very dark, warm color. And when I put paints like this on a dark, warm color, I'm really comparing the paint on the palette to the color of the palette itself. And here I'm comparing it to something very neutral. I want this dark enough because the sky is going to be very bright. I'm going to warm that slightly. I think that's about the right value. Here we have several decks here, and I'm going to differentiate them just by the brush strokes. It'll be one large shape right here, but I can kind of see where each deck goes just by the way I've placed these brush strokes in here. This looks like the wheelhouse up here, and then a little bit more of the ship coming on this side. We have two stacks in the back here, and I'll take this dark color once again, and I'll start adding a few of these cross braces and so on down here. I don't have to be totally accurate when I do this. I mean, it's always nice to be totally accurate, but I don't want to restrain myself from having any artistic license and moving things around so they might make a better composition. I don't think anybody's going to come out here and compare this painting to what is actually up there. Here we have a crane up here. There's a little bell ringing over there, and there's a piece of equipment that keeps going back and forth here, loading the iron ore onto this ship, and that's what you might be hearing. Sometimes the addition of a few little negative areas and strokes don't hurt a composition like this at all, even if they might not be accurate or totally meaningful as far as the accuracy goes. Now that piece of equipment I just mentioned is way down here now. It keeps moving back and forth, so I'm going to put in a little bit of that right in here because I like the shape of it. Gives it that industrial look. And again, I'll just put that in a big blocky shape, and we'll define that in a little while with some negative areas. Well, you would think the reflection of that ship would be a red color, a rusty red color, but it's not. I'm just seeing a lot of greens in there. So I'm just going to go with what I see here, and I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and Indian yellow, and I'll spray this some. That'll make my paint flow on here easily. And I'll put that green down here. And if it looks wrong or it looks unnatural, what I'll do is I'll just put some of that burnt sienna color in there, because in the end I want this painting to look natural. And if I put something in here that looks natural, even though that's the way I see it out there, it might not make such a good painting. So I can change things as I go here. I did add a touch of red in there. It does seem to need that. And as we go down, we see more ripples. Okay, over here we have a lot of reflection again, and it tends to be that dark green color. Just a small amount of white in here. There we go. And I'm using just a big brush here just to cover this, because I don't want to spend a lot of time in details. Right now I want to get these basics down, because you never know when the light is going to change. It could cloud over. So many different variables. It's really kind of important to work quite quickly out here when doing paintings on location. Oh, this is kind of an exciting subject. I like this. It's really nice being here on the Great Lakes. Now, one unusual thing about this subject here is that we have strong lights and strong darks, but very little in between. No middle tones except right in here. So it makes a really dramatic composition. I'm going to work on the sky, and it's bluish sky, but very washed out. Cerulean blue, Indian yellow, and a touch of alizarin crimson. Those are my three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And with those I can make a gray. I'm going to try and mix quite a bit of this just so I can cover it. And then if I need to go back, hopefully this might still be wet, you know, a few minutes from now, if I need to touch up an area or put in some of these negative areas. I'm going to put in the big areas first here. Now right now I can't even see the horizon out there. It's this early morning sunlight, and it must be a bit misty or foggy out there, so I don't even see the horizon. I could put the horizon in, or I could just leave it out. And we've got a big area of sky here. The brushes I'm using are brights, which means they're flat brushes with sort of short bristles on them. Whoa. Oh, we have a beautiful passenger train right over there with sun decks on them. I haven't seen those for a long time. This is where it really gets fun, to start to put in these negative areas. Okay, here we have the top of the stack. Just come down here, continue with these negative areas. Shortly I'm going to have to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to put the water in, and I'm going to leave it the same color as the sky because I can't see any of the horizon out there. Maybe just a sliver, but it's so subtle. I think I'll leave it out for right now. I'll keep going with the large brush and just slide it in this way to create a few of those ripples. Now as these ripples get closer to me, they get further apart. I'm going to mix this color again of the water and the sky. Just drag that over with that nice chisel point I have on the brush. And I'll put a few of those ripples over on this side. I may not need to do anything more to that area of the water. I have a lot of paint on my brush here. I'm going to wipe most of that off. Just kind of squeeze that out. That'll give me a nice chisel edge there again. Then I can make these fine lines with the ripples. I don't see any other ripples up here, so we'll just keep those down towards the bottom of the painting. With this dark color, I'll put in the stacks, top part of them, right there. There's two stacks up there, one kind of behind the other. And I'll pick up that sky color. Boy, this does dry fast out here. I'll drop in a few more negative areas right in here. Now I'm going to put in more of the structure, but I'm just going to start with these few negative areas first. And then I'll put some of the dark areas over these light areas. So to create this, I'm not just using negative areas. I like using negative areas because it gives the painting a very painterly look. So that's one advantage to paint using the negative areas. I'm picking up a small pointed brush, and I'll add some of the windows and portals and things like that on the ship. Nice thing about painting like this too is I can always take a reference photograph and refine it more if I want to when I get home. I think in this case I might be able to finish this on location. I'll see. Most often I can't finish a painting on location. I really need to get back into the studio and put a few finishing touches on it. Like I said earlier, I can never tell really what's going to come off quickly and easily and what's going to be a struggle. There's just no guarantees about this. A few more windows down here. There are times always when paintings are just more fun for some reason or other. Okay, here we have the a line coming across here. This is where the first deck comes up here. We have a railing up here, a few more windows. It's starting to take shape. And there's just always lots of pipes and different things going on in a ship like this. Got the flag off the back. Got a lot of ambient noise going on around it. Kind of makes it exciting, but a little distracting sometimes. Generally, things like that don't bother me when I'm painting. And here we've got that thing moving back and forth. It's coming back this way now, so I'm going to put a few of those shapes in here that I see with what looks like some sort of conveyor belt. We have some light poles up here, some on the other side. Right on the back of the ship, those stacks are catching some beautiful sunlight. So I'm taking white and quite thick. I'm just laying that on there to put that nice highlight right there. That'll be the brightest part of the painting. On the back of the ship, it's catching some sunlight. So with white and alizarin crimson, I don't really see it as alizarin crimson, but I'm going to beef up the color some. I'll put that sunlight right down there on the back of the ship, right there. And I'll add some of that right below here because it's reflecting in the lake. There. I'm going to add another thin line of alizarin crimson right up here. That will sort of indicate that that ship kind of keeps going until it gets to this solid portion right here. Okay, I'll get these dark colors one more time. Ultramarine blue and brown. That'll just give me a nice dark color. And I'll add just some more of this structure. I'm going to try and pick it up a little bit just because of the time we have out here. If I were painting just for myself here, doing a plein air painting, I might spend a couple hours out here. But I have to try and keep my subjects fairly simple on a program like this and try to get everything in. So I never mean to rush, but at the same time, I want to try and get enough done where you can see what the basics are about painting. Okay, I'm going to make a lighter color with my burnt sienna and white, and right where these posts go down, here they are catching some light. I'm just going to use a ruler and put my hand on here just so I can use it as a guide to get a straight line. I'll do the same over here. And these don't have to be real straight lines. You know, I just want to give the impression here of what's going on. So if these lines are a little crooked, that's okay with me. Might even enhance the painting for that matter. Okay, here we've got a lot of cross bracing going on and more of this heavy iron work down here. This is a massive structure. Right up here I can see very faintly some more of the iron work. And it doesn't show up very much to my eye, so I'm just going to suggest it in here. Here we have a division here, right about here. I'm just going to indicate that very subtly with a straight line across here. And there's a lot of steel posts right underneath, so I'm going to start on this side. I want to keep them quite dark. Just bring down some of these. I'm just laying my finger on the ruler, and that helps me guide my brush stroke here. Holding these up, we have a base here, so I'll make that a little thicker. And across the bottom. You know what I have to be careful of is not to get too much detail in here, because if I do, I think I'll lose what strength I have in this painting. So I have to keep reminding myself, just don't go too far with it. All right, right up here, we have these look like chutes and I'm assuming that the boat pulls in, and these chutes that are right in here, they come down and they lower the iron ore into the ship. And right now they're in the up position. I think I'll take my flat brush again and just create those in a bit of a different texture or color here. There's a whole lot of those. There's just, man, there must be 100 of them along there because these ships are long. Okay, so here's chute number 1 here, and it just goes right down that way. And I want to keep this about the same value as this. I don't want these to show up a lot. Okay, here's chute number 2, 3, and so on. And then with the small pointed brush again, I'll put in a few of the highlights that I see towards the top of those. And they kind of go like this in. These have a lot of ribs or something on them. I'm not sure what that function is, but I'll just indicate a few of these lines through here. And I won't do all of them, just suggest 1 or 2 here or there. Well, that should do that. Right under here, I need to make this darker. So I think I'll keep using this small brush with my blue and brown, make this dark color, and I'll work on a few areas here and suggest some of the other iron work in there just by using some negative areas. Now, not all of these are negative areas. Here you can see this is not a negative area here, but these here are. These ships are always rusty, and I love that part of a ship because it always had so much character. So with my burnt sienna, I'm going to just drag down some little rusty areas right on this boat, right in here. And I'll take some darker color, some brown, and I'll do the same thing right down here on the side of the ship. Maybe a reflection or 2 of these posts. Right at the base of the ship, I'm going to make that very dark. It is pretty dark already, but make it as dark as I can. Then I'm going to push a little bit of a shadow or some water movement, whatever it could be, right out this way. And with pure burnt sienna, I'll add a bit more color right in here. And then drag some of that color down into the water. Reflections are always changing. So I always feel free to change these reflections however it suits me and suits the particular painting. Well, I really enjoyed painting the iron ore docks here in Agate Bay. I'm going to leave the painting as it is. I'm not going to do any more studio work on it. So I'll sign it now and consider it finished.
Welcome to Two Harbors, Minnesota. This small city developed from the discovery of nearby iron ore. Completed in 1886, the Duluth Iron Ore Railway is a significant part of the area's history. The Lake County Historical Society has preserved the great-looking train depot where you can learn some of the town's past and inspect several engines up close, including this giant Yellowstone-class steam engine with a working weight of nearly 1 million pounds. It's an awesome sight to see a meticulously restored engine of this size, and I can only guess at the long hours of restoration it took by dedicated volunteers. I'm so glad they treasure it. Summer months offer a 6-hour excursion on the North Shore Scenic Railroad, which begins in Duluth. A few hundred yards from the depot, you'll see 2 bays that gave Two Harbors its name. There's a light station that's now a B&B, and a brightly painted lady called the Edna G, right down by the iron ore dock that Roger painted. This was the last steam-driven tugboat in operation on the Great Lakes. The Edna G was built in 1896 by the Cleveland, Ohio Shipbuilding Company and named for the daughter of the president of the Duluth and Iron Range Railroad. Operating with a crew of 4, the Edna G was used around the clock to help bring boats to dock, move boats around from dock to dock, and to assist in life-saving rescues. take the tour, and you can step inside the pilot house where the captain managed the speed and maneuvers. The ship's telegraph, or chadburn, was what the captain used to signal down to the engine room the direction and speed he wanted to go. This engine is a double expansion steam engine, which means the steam is used twice. This first cylinder is a control piston for the steam. It allows the steam to come into the next piston, and then the steam is transferred into the last piston where it's used again. All this required tons of coal to keep the steam up to pressure and a crew to shovel it. Continue to the bunk room. Simple but adequate. Probably very restful at the end of your 8-hour shift. Then the captain's quarters with lounge and hardwood paneling, a few extra bunks with wool blankets, definitely more stately with an increased pay grade. The simple galley with a wood stove and a nice view. And before we leave, take a look at the 3-foot-long water cannon used in firefighting and for washing off the ore docks after an ore boat was loaded. The Edna G is on the National Register of Historic Places and looks very fit for her 119 years. Glad we met.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.